And so, but it was just like horrendous. It was just shit. And we bombed for like ever. And I remember it was like, we went like, I think it was like on the 7th week. And like, to the point where people were like, oh, these kids, and like,
like, oh.
yeah, because we didn't know there was a comedy mic. And then we were doing it. And then I remember like, I was telling the same joke I told last week, trying to like make it better, because you find out like, oh, you don't always have to tell a new joke every time you hit the stage, right? So then I'm like trying to do it, and then this guy goes, hey man, you told that shit last week. And I just went, you know what, Matt? Yeah, I did. And I'm going to tell it this week because I'm trying to better it. Just like I'm trying to better myself. I'm like, you pieces of shit here. I'm like, why don't you come up here? You're here every week, but all you do is drink Pilsner, you sack of shit. And I like went off on these guys, and I'm like, I'm looking at the bartender. I'm like, and you, huh? You don't even know how to make a Tom Collins. All I want is a little bit of soda water, bar lime, some simple syrup. And like I was going off on her, and I'm like, I don't even like to drink your drinks, but I like you, and that's how much you chose. And like I went off on all these people, and then I got like a huge, everybody just started clapping, and then the one, and then it was like Ben Disaster, I think, was the host or whatever, and he comes up and he's like, that's what we've been waiting for, kid. Oh. And then I was just like, oh, they just wanted to see like pain and like angst. Yeah. And
rage.
Then, yeah. And then...
Hi everyone, welcome back. This is season 4 of Shooting the Breeze. This week my guest is Danny Martinello. Danny is a brilliant comedian based out of Toronto. He's a comedian, he's an actor, he's awesome, and he's my guest this week. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. All right, so first of all, thank you for
no stress
meeting with me and taking the time from your schedule. I know we had technical difficulties last week, so we've rescheduled it to this week, and I appreciate that so much.
No worries at all.
I know how busy you are and everything, so this is awesome. So first question, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the ravines and river valleys of Edmonton, Alberta.
Wow.
Not really. I wasn't like a rabid child growing up.
Just
our backyard. Yeah. Our backyard was onto like a ravine, but I grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
Okay. Do you have siblings?
I have one older brother by 3 years.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. What was your childhood like?
It was fun, running around, I guess, kind of hanging out with like I only really had 3 friends, I guess, growing up because I was kind of a bit of a bad boy, so I hung out with the neighborhood misfits, but it was fun. It was pretty good. It was a nice upbringing. Played a lot of soccer, played a lot of running around just my yards, and bike racing with the neighborhood kids and going to school and stuff like that.
Awesome. Have you ever always wanted to be a performer or a comedian specifically?
I guess like I kind of always did it, but I didn't know I always wanted to be it until like maybe I was around 12 or 11. But my first profession I wanted to be was either an animal biologist, not like a marine, but probably just like a land one, because I was always fascinated with like animals and like kind of like science and that aspect of it. And then I wanted to be a police officer in a canine unit. That was one of my big goals and aspirations. And then I just realized getting into trouble was kind of fun, and well, I mean, you would get in trouble for like just cracking jokes and kind of being a disobedient kid, I guess. And so I knew I don't think the police force was going to be too good for me. And then because my family always, like, my mom was in the arts, where she was like an artist, and then my grandma was like a thespian till the day she died. So I was always kind of involved in like whether it was church community theater or like school plays and stuff, and I always was like kind of drawn to that. But I think maybe around like 12, that's when I was kind of like, oh, I want to do this for like a job.
Oh wow. That's really young. Like I know I was 15. I was around 15 when I was like, I want to do it. I waited like 40 years till I actually did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
knew pretty young.
Well,
Um
I'd watch like I'd go to my brother's like play because he was over 3 years older than me, but he was 4 years older in school because he was a year put in early. But I'd always go watch him get all the laughs and stuff on like on stage in his plays and all the kind of stuff. And of course, you know, as a younger brother, you're like, oh, I want to do what Big Bro's doing, you know, and then
exactly.
he kind of like deviated from it later on in his adolescence, but I stuck with it because I don't know, it was just super fun for me.
Oh, cool. So you were like in all like school productions and things
Yeah,
like that?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was on all my improv teams in like junior high and high school, and then like in elementary, I would be part of like the Christmas pageants and like
Oh,
all
wow.
that kind of stuff. And then I grew up Catholic, so like whenever I'd go to like Sunday school and all that stuff, I'd be part of and I'd be involved in like the plays and kind of like I don't know what you call them, recitals or
Yeah,
whatever it
there's a
is.
name for I grew up Catholic too, and there's a name for like the pageant or so there's a name for it,
Yeah,
like the
yeah. So like
nativity
when the
scenes. Yeah.
Christmas, yeah, yeah, or like Easter or any of that.
Yes,
And I
yes.
remember at like,
There's a term for like the production around
yeah,
that, but I
yeah.
can't think of it right now. But yeah.
Yeah, it was actually funny as I was just thinking of this story with my brother. I was talking to him the other day, but it was when we were they had like there it was I can't remember if it was Christmas or Easter, but it was one of the ones where it was like the big Jesus is coming here kind of one where you're like, we can't fool around, you know, JC's coming up. This is his big day, right? It's one of those ones, but they had like an Elvis element to it, and I was the Elvis guy. But my
Elvis?
brother, yeah, yeah, yeah. So like I was like this Elvis like Fonzie kind of character or whatever, just the guy in the leather jacket that would do like the dancing kind of stuff. And then my brother was like, "Oh, we can't do that with Elvis," and he took off like he unbuttoned too many buttons, and then he drew with a Sharpie like chest hair and stuff, and it was like almost too provocative for the
You were
thing.
like
So
sexy Jesus or
yeah, yeah,
something.
the sexy greases, little grease Jesus.
Oh my God. As
Or I think it
my
was no, I think it was like a yeah, it was like a grease something, and then I was like, and then my brother was like, "Well, let's get you real good," and then we took elements of Elvis with the hip thrusts and all that stuff, and my mom said it was brilliant, but I think a lot of the church overseers didn't like it.
it's
It's probably because of that
blasphemous.
yeah, 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 little 9-year-old boy is getting the guys a little too excited there in
Yeah, you
the
just it's triggered everyone.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, that's too funny. That's too funny. It's like I have a younger sister and she was very heavily involved with like school plays and stuff like that. And even now as like adult, she's involved with community theater and things like that. And I never did that. Like I did like choir in
Okay,
high
yeah.
school. I think I did it my first couple of
I
years.
don't know. I always loved drama too because it was like that was the one thing where I'm like you could kind of be free and be in a sense where it's like all the stuff that you would get in trouble for, like you know, making jokes in regular classes or like doing in the hallways or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I just liked it too because it was like I don't know, it was in all walks of life. Like everybody came to kind of like collectively because you had the people where they're like, oh, I don't want to do like school or other electives, so I'm just going to take like drama and performing arts. But then
Mm,
they would either realize it is an actual class and then they would not show up and drop out, or you'd have like, you know, the kid that would usually not be part of theater, like, you know, whether he came from kind of like a rough neighborhood and stuff, because my high school was like on a feeder of like a pretty predominant, I'd say like upper middle class to like very dirt poor, kind of like low income and like
hmm.
gang and all that kind of stuff, right? So we would have just a nice
A
collective
mix of
like,
people, yeah.
oh yeah, a nice stew of people that would just come and like add all kinds of spicy ingredients to it. And like I remember my buddy Malanga, you know, he was like just this hood guy, you know, but he was like so funny and good at drama and stuff. And it was like it was nice because all the other kids didn't know how to handle him and stuff, right? Because you have like dweebish theater kids come in, be like, and you got this hood dude just being like throwing down on heavy improv, and there was like it was sick. So I don't know. I was always gravitated towards, I guess, I don't know, maybe I don't know whether it was the arts, but I would just say probably like the freedom that the arts provided.
Right,
That
right.
was my kind of.
Oh wow. Because I remember we had drama class in, I think from secondary two, like grade 8 to about grade 10, and I really loved it. But there was some, for me, there was some disconnect between like the stuff we did in that class and like going for like bigger productions, like the big productions and stuff like that. I like the aspect of we were given like a theme and we'd have to come up with a skit in like
Yeah.
5 minutes or something like that. That was a lot of fun for me, but I never went beyond that except until I tried to grow like a leaf and went, no, no, thank you.
Yeah. That was your intro. Remember, Simone, no parts are small parts.
Exactly. But I felt, I think I was too, I just felt too self-conscious. I was like, I feel silly doing this. I don't want to
Oh
do
yeah,
this.
for
So
sure.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that's what
So
it's like. It kind of like,
mm,
that's why as like a comedian, I feel like like that had the effect where it's just like whatever, you know what I mean? Take the piss out of me. You don't
yeah,
understand what I did on stage, having to dress up as
exactly. Like I
a cat.
understand that now.
Yeah,
I understand that now, but back then it was like, I
yeah,
can't, I can't do that. So
yeah.
I'm, am I correct to assume that you've always been very outgoing and like not shy? Like
I
you've
guess
been,
so.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
I would say my mom would describe me as a non-shy child.
Okay. So like was anybody in your family, like say your immediate family, your parents and your brother, were they shocked when you just are like were they not surprised when you're like, I want to be a stand-up, I want to be an actor, that you were taking your life in that direction?
Yeah, I'd say it was kind of like a funny where like my dad's always kind of been like like what kind of job you gonna get kind of guy or whatever, right? Where it's like, oh, that's good, the arts is good and stuff like that, but like, what do you like?
Yeah, you need a real
What's the
job.
fallback or like what's
Yeah.
gonna be the actual source of income, right? So it's like, but it was funny because when I told my dad I'm gonna be like a stand-up comedian, he was kind of more upset that like I wasn't pursuing acting.
Really?
Yeah, so like
Really?
I always thought that was kind of like a shock, right? Where
Wow.
like he was more bummed that I'm not like being
That,
an actor.
oh
But I guess
wow.
like to him, maybe he saw it whereas like actors, they have a job or whatever. It's like, as an Italian background, it's like you got your De Niro's, your Pacinos, all these kind of big whole things. So maybe to him, it was like, oh, you go to the schools and you study your craft. And it's like that almost has like the same kind of trajectory as maybe a trade or something. But then it was like, I'm just gonna go around tell dick jokes in bars for chicken wings and pints. He was kind of like, all right, like
He's
it
like,
was
I don't understand.
yeah, it was just like, oh, so what? You're gonna just go hang out with your friends and drink and tell jokes? Like,
Right.
what's the difference between that besides a stage? You can do that around a campfire kind of thing, right? So, but I don't know. I think it was pretty like, yeah, I would say I was fortunate enough, to have it where like no matter what I did, as long as it wasn't really like a hindrance to my life or a bad life path. my
Right.
my parents and family were always super supportive, and like when I first moved to Toronto, I don't think I would have been able to stay there or excel as much as I did without the support of my family. So I don't think, yeah, there was not really show. I still get kind of jabs and barbs from my dad being like, well, you want to be a firefighter or like something. I'm like, I don't know.
Well, it's good that you had support.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's really good. Um, like how did you get into stand up, and like what was your first, like, yeah, how did you get into it? And then after that, what was like your first time performing stand up like?
Um, how I got into it, like I always was kind of like funny and doing like, I guess at that time you could now consider them like routines or like holding court at like parties or friends, stuff like that.
Hmm.
But I was heavily into improv in like around grade 12 and stuff. But like the way it was like our school was like kind of like it was known for its theater program, but it was also known for its like drugs and like gang activity and like
Oh, okay.
stuff, right? Like that. But our improv team was like always top notch within the city, winning like rapid fire theaters or like CIGs and stuff like that. So then it was like from grade 10 and 11 and 12 we were all involved in that. But then around our grade 12 year, it was like we had key players kind of like leave almost, so it was like the essence of our improv team was kind of in a rebuild phase. And my drama teacher, it was kind of seeing the frustrations of it, and like she knew I loved performing and stuff, and she would always let me do kind of like little routines and things, because it was like on the Fridays we would do a lunchtime announcement in the school, and then telling everybody, oh, it's Friday improv, like see you guys at the theater, right? Like kind of stuff. And but we turned those into skits and like kind of like monologues and stuff. And
Oh,
those
okay.
were getting like a lot of traction from like even the teachers and stuff. So then she was like, hey, like have you ever thought about doing stand up? And I was like, oh, why? Well, like, yeah. She's like, I think you'd be good at it. So she bought me tickets to go see Richard Lewis at the comic strip with her and her husband.
Wow.
Because I turned 18 in like middle of grade 12, right? So then she took me out, and or no, I was 17 at the time, and she took me out to go and see it. And then that's when I was like, oh shit, I can do this. This is super fun. Like I like
Mhm.
to do this, right? But I would always try and go and do like mics that time and like go to the amateur nights and stuff. But at the time the clubs wouldn't let me because
As you're
I
underage.
wasn't 17, right? Or I
Oh.
was 17 and I wasn't 18. That's why sometimes when I see people that are like 16 doing stand up, I'm like, you piece of shit. Like, I'm like, I tried being like you know, like I'd have 2 more years on my clock. But, but then, yeah, you're like, oh man, you know, like get it, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, for
so
sure.
then I had to wait till I was like 18. And I still remember to this day, I would like sneak, I'd bring my brother's ID and pull the wool over some of the guys' eyes and stuff. And I almost went up at the Laugh Shop in Londonderry on their amateur night, but then the guy caught me and he like kicked me out. He
Oh
was
no.
a dick. Ryan Patterson. He still does comedies out in BC. Me and him, he knows what's up. He halted my earnings and my beginnings as a young 17-year-old aspiring boy. And that's why, you know, you feel good about yourself too, crushing a young kid's dreams. But guess what, baby, we're still here. No, so like that was a thing. So I would say Jody Schwartz, out in Edmonton, Alberta, lovely teacher, probably saved the trajectory of my life with it with theater. But she got me into stand up, bringing me out. And then my first one was when I turned 18. We didn't know that there was like, because I just wanted to get at the bit, so I turned 18 on the Saturday, and we found out that there was an open mic on the Sunday, and it was at New City in Edmonton, which was the goth bar. So it was like the emo punk goth bar, but we didn't know that like open mic was music open mic. We were just like, whatever, let's go and do it. So it was me and
Oh,
my buddy
okay.
Ian Brown, and we'd go and do our stand up, and then we'd go and do improv, like on the same thing, right? So we would do our together, and it was the most horrific, brutal, soul torturing, sadistic, masochistic things ever, because it was a room packed full of people that hated their life and were playing their open mic like, I'm gonna kill myself if my dad doesn't love me today,
Oh
kind of
my God.
music, you know, where it was like, woe is so me. And then we had these bright like 18-year-old like still in high school, hey guys, improv, yes, and okay, here's my stand up. And I remember one of my first bits was like, me trying to talk about how I'm standing up in a stand-up tan bed while I'm like liking the music and dancing, but I'm like dancing happily getting blasted by cancer or something. And like, and so, but it was just like horrendous. It was just shit. And we bombed for like ever. And I remember it was like, we went like, I think it was like on the 7th week. And like, to the point where people were like, "Oh, these kids," and like,
Like, oh.
yeah, because we didn't know there was a comedy mic, and then we were doing it, and then I remember, like, I was telling the same joke I told last week, trying to, like, make it better, because you find out, like, oh, you don't always have to tell a new joke every time you hit the stage, right? So then I'm, like, trying to do it, and then this guy goes, "Hey, man, you told that shit last week." And I just went, "You know what, Matt? Yeah, I did. And I'm going to tell it this week because I'm trying to better it. Just like I'm trying to better myself. I'm like, you pieces of shit here. I'm like, why don't you come up here? You're here every week, but all you do is drink Pilsner, you sack of shit." And I like went off on these guys. And I'm like, I'm looking at the bartender. I'm like, "And you, huh? You don't even know how to make a Tom Collins. All I want is a little bit of soda water, bar lime, some simple syrup." And like I was going off on her, and I'm like, "I don't even like to drink your drinks, but I like you, and that's how much you chose." And like I went off on all these people, and then I got like a huge, everybody just started clapping, and then the one, and then it was like Ben Disaster, I think, was the host or whatever, and he comes up and he's like, "That's what we've been waiting for, kid." And
Oh.
then I was just like, "Oh, they just wanted to see like pain and like angst."
Angst,
Yeah, and then
rage.
yeah, and then so like, and then at that point I'm like, "Oh shit, okay, cool, like, all right, now I feel like I'm part of the club, right?" Like I finally earned my stripes and I earned their just
You're
love
there,
and
like, respect
admiration.
and everything, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
and then
that's
and
so
then the
cool.
lady started like the bartender took a shine to us, and then she started making us cupcakes and little banana breads and everything every week, right?
Oh,
'Cause
wow.
yeah, so it was nice. But then we found out that there was comedy open mic the same on the Sunday at another bar. And we were like, why are we torturing ourselves at a music mic? Plus, all these guys suck and no one does stand up. So let's go see what an actual stand up mic was,
Yeah.
right? And then we stopped going to New City for like a really long time until one day we were like, "Yo, we should probably do a double hitter. Like, let's go hit up New City and then go to the open mic." All right. And then we go back, and then the bartender was just devastated. She's like, "Where'd you guys go? I made
Oh, no.
cupcakes 3 weeks in a row, and you guys didn't
Aw.
even show up." And we were like, "Oh, we found this mic." And then she was like, "Okay, that's understandable. Go with your people." And we,
Go with your people.
yeah, and we were like, "Okay, sweet." And then it was nice because it just felt like this place kind of like molded us and got us ready for like, because we would go to these heckle mics, right? Like, well, they were not heckle mics, but we go to the stand-up comedy, and then these guys would be like heckling us, and then we'd be like, "Yo, you don't even know like where we came from. We came from hell,
Yeah,
like
exactly. You don't scare
literally."
us. Like,
Yeah, yeah, like I was getting heckled with a guy with like eye makeup down to here that looked like he had no eyeballs, like it was just pure socket, like tell, and like hurtful stuff too, like like
oh,
about my mom and dad, and
oh,
like
shit.
like utter death threats to me, and
Oh
what's
my
this guy
God.
gonna just say piping up about a 7 Up tag? So it was like,
Wow. That's
yeah,
like boot camp. You went through boot camp.
oh yeah, and plus it was like, that's what I tell everybody, where it's like, what did they like? Oh, how, or they look at you now and they're like, "Oh man, were you always good? Like, what was it like when you started stand up?" And you're like, "Well, man, and you just bombed for 6 months and then decide if you keep like that." That's why it's like, I'll always, even if I don't like maybe agree with the comics personality or like, or anything, it's just like there's still like, okay, yeah, there's
You're still
that base
figuring it out.
layer where
Yeah.
it's like, even if this guy, heaven forbid, always, if there was a something where I'd have to, jump and kind of save a fellow brother or sister or whatever, where it's like, you know what I mean, there's a level of like, you're not there or you're there, or like you don't, you like, you're in on it, and we're all
Yeah.
in on it,
We're all, yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, where it's
Exactly.
like, something where I'm like, you have to be a sicko almost, you
It's
know?
it's true because it takes, yeah, because what I've read somewhere and I've heard stuff where like public speaking and death are like people's biggest fears.
Yeah, well,
But
yeah, that's what is it? Public speaking's number one, and death is so. Some people would rather. What's that line? Some people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy.
yeah, you
Yeah,
know, and that's like in any setting. Meanwhile, we get up in front of God knows who. We sometimes,
yeah.
most times, we don't know, they're strangers, and we don't know we're walking into God knows whatever environment with the purpose of making these strangers laugh.
Oh yeah,
Like
and
that,
it's
I
like,
think there's something that's
yeah, it,
that
yeah,
drives
yeah,
us
it
to
is.
do that. Like,
And you're like, that's why it's kind of always. I always like it too, where it's like when you ask comics, like, what do you like, or if people ask you, it's like, oh, what did you get, like, what did you get into it, or like what do you get out of it, kind of stuff like that. And like that's what I really appreciate the pandemic, almost in a sense, like as much as it took from us, it also like showed us how much it gave to us, almost like the appreciation for what we do and
yeah,
stuff like that. And like that's where it's like it made me kind of reschedule or not or reevaluate almost. I'm like, why do I do stand up? Because at one point it just became a job almost, where it's like
mhm,
got a book for this and all this, and like you're planning and you're not enjoying it, and you're like trying to find the money gigs or trying to tailor your art so you can pass a bar for some other people to get into a money making situation and all that. And then it was like when that was all taken away, you're just like, wait a minute, no, I needed this because it was like part of me, or it was like an essence of like like performance aspect, where it's
yeah,
like, me and you are here in this room, and like, yes, this is my stuff, but also your energy and your thoughts and what you're laughing at creates a new kind of thing where I get to take my stuff to a next level because you've given me the energy to, because
yeah,
now it's like I know how, okay, I found you funny, so it's
yeah.
like let's kind of tailor it, which is sweet. And like I think that's why I didn't even do any Zoom shows over the whole
I
pandemic.
was going to ask you if you did
Yeah.
any Zoom
I think
shows.
I did one, and I was in lineup for it, and then I was sitting in my room, yeah, and then like I was like I think like 2 up to go or something, and then I just like closed my laptop and said I had internet issues. I just mid-show lineup, like, it was
You're
like I
like, no.
left the club. Yeah, I looked and I'm like, "Oh, I'm 2 up, sick," and then I just like, wow. But it was to me, it was like I felt more sick trying to do that than I did healed. And so I'm like,
Okay.
"Okay, I'm gonna take a step back," and then when these live shows started coming back, I was like, "Oh, I didn't get it in it for, like, the attention or the stuff, like, I got it in for, like, the aspect of performing, right? Because
Hmm.
I didn't need to do it when I was a kid, when I was a child. I didn't need laughs. I got the laughs, but that's not necessarily, what I was
The
doing it for. I was
motivation,
doing
yeah.
it for draw the chest hair on me, run around and like be free and silly, Where it was like,
Right.
because you can't do that in certain jobs unless you find like your workmates, like, when you had your daytime jobs where it's like, oh, these are the cool people that like, because
Yeah.
there's people that are comedians, I find, or have comedic souls, but they don't necessarily go up on stage and do it, like a lot of my funny friends or the funniest people I know aren't comics.
Same.
It's just
Same with
where
me.
we have the ability to walk past that threshold on stage and tell the jokes to people. But like I believe, it's almost like
Definitely.
there's people where it's like, oh, this guy, he would be a great warrior, a great soldier, but he's not. He's like the blacksmith. But like, if somebody comes to the town, like he's definitely picking up arms, So it's
Yeah.
like
Oh,
that's what
yeah.
I like about humor, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, because I um with the Zoom shows, because like in doing all these interviews, like I've noticed a trend, and myself included. Because when the pandemic hit, when everything shut down, I was only like 6 months in. I'd done
Oh, okay,
maybe a dozen, if that many,
yeah.
sets by that time, like in like clubs or shows. So people who were like brand new or like within a year, and people who had been doing it for a while, there was a real line
Yeah.
where like I pivoted very quickly because I was like, I was just getting momentum and I didn't want to
Yeah.
lose it. So I went directly online and I
Yeah.
used all of those. I did hundreds of Zoom shows to just to get better because I was just so young, I was so new. And like it taught me a lot, even though I knew it's not, I had the benefit of having performed live and then really liking it and wanting to get better and everything. And I think there are things that I learned on Zoom that I don't think I could have learned otherwise,
Oh, for sure.
you know.
Yeah, and I think it was like at they didn't have where I was at yet, where the Zooms where it was like if I had like that Tony Robbins setup or Lars Cali who had a really great setup too, where it was like they had like the 120 people or whatever, you can see them in the screen, you were like in a studio kind of
Yeah.
style, like maybe like I'd be doing that, like I would love to do kind of those ones, but now that performance is back, it's like you're gonna have to
Yeah,
hit me
I
with a
don't do
nice chunk of
many.
change to do that, or like
Exactly.
some social experiment, but yeah,
Yeah.
like that would have been good. But if it was just like me and you, like, sitting at my table like this, and like you've seen me perform where it's like, like I don't know, I'm doing act outs or I'm
Yeah, exactly.
moving.
I don't
Like if
think you could
I'm
be contained in
yeah, in a small little
yeah.
screen. And I was as I was watching this, I'm like, these just look like madmen screaming into a
Yeah,
computer.
that's what I was about to say. Like I felt like a lunatic. Like if anybody could hear me or if anyone could see me, I was just like, it's like, why is that woman just screaming at her
Oh, for
computer?
sure.
Just
Yeah.
like in a room, like a
Yeah.
brightly lit room screaming sort of
Yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah. And it was
You
like, and
know?
I had to find like quiet places in my house because I was living with like my girlfriend at the time and then her sister. And so like I got to find like places, and it just felt like I was like in like a weird like junkie addict, like like grabbing my laptop, being like in the corner with like a microphone, just like with headphones, like I'm freebasing jokes, and everything just felt nasty. But at that time, I was really dreading comedy. So I was like, what
Mm,
am I doing? I'm like, this is like, one, I'm not getting it. And two, it's like, I'm doing it like this, where it's like,
mm,
so
yeah,
all of it was just a nice, like, kind of reset where I'm like, you know what? This is it. And I had to take the pivot too, where it was like, I started working in TV and film like every day because they were on a backlog catalog of productions, right? So it was like, every day was putting in 10s or 12-hour days on film, and then like
yeah.
going heavy where you're like 56 days on, 2 days off, like
Wow.
insane shift work. So I'm like, you know what, I did comedy, this is a pandemic, well, I don't even know what this is, the whole world's halted, my mom's telling me just to chill and stop, nothing, see, because this is a
Yeah,
time.
we didn't even know. Like we didn't
Well,
know. Like we're
yeah.
going 3 years. We're almost at 3 years. Like especially in those early days, we didn't know what was
Oh,
going to
heck yeah.
happen.
And then even
Yeah.
like, it's unprecedented where it's like when something happens or you don't know, it's like, okay, well, let's ask our parents, or I mean, my parents are like, yeah, and you're like, oh shit,
Exactly. Nobody
okay,
knows.
right? And like
It's true.
the only outlet, and you're looking at everything being like people are scrounging,
Yeah.
jobs are caught, and you're like, oh shit. And then you see the gravy train of the film coming. So I'm like, whatever, I'm just doing that. And then I kind of was like, you know what? It's all good. Did 12 years of comedy. We had some blasts, we had some fun. Let's be a tradesman. And then so
Let's do
I go and
something
do
else.
welding and all this shit, and then I'm like doing all that, but then it's like I see these like things and I try it once. I'm like, oh, it's all dirty, and it's still like not appeasing, but it was almost like I took it from doing it so long and being able to do it, and like I took it for granted, and then it spoiled it, and then it becomes that like, oh, I've been doing it for like 12 years, all
Mm,
these people are getting it and all this shit, right? It becomes sour. But then it was like I was wishing for to take a break, and then but I knew if I stopped, people would keep going. So I'm like, I can't stop.
right.
But then when the world stopped, I was like, nice,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It was
And
like a
then,
reset for everyone on like
yeah.
all different levels. It's
And
true.
and coming out of it too, where it was like that's why it's like I have a new appreciation for the comedy scene as well as like even coast to coast across Canada, where it's like it's so much healthier. That's what
Yes.
I find, and it's more of like a community, and it's not even like sure you still have your crabs that try and keep you down, but like I would say like majority of it, it's like 95% cleansed of all like the negative people and all that because it's
Yeah.
like they realize too like oh just because they've been doing it for so long they almost felt like that was part of them and they had to keep going and I got to that point too, right? But I still have the love for it and it came
Yeah.
back and kind of re-nurtured the relationship. But then yeah, I feel like the pandemic almost gave an opportunity for the people that truly wanted to quit but didn't quit, and that's why they were miserable and being rude to other people because they didn't like their life, but it gave
Yeah.
them the opportunity to assess and reevaluate what they want out of their lives, and then they were like oh
Exactly.
comedy's not it, and so it was like now a fresh layer of like hey man we got through it dude, like yeah what do you need, okay sweet I got that tools, here you go, like oh no don't worry I can't use
Yeah.
them, you use them. So like everybody's now sharing like whether it's gig contacts or tags or like
Yeah.
you
People
know
are kinder,
content
I
or
think.
every it's more of like
A
now it
community.
truly almost feels like a drama class again where
Hmm.
it's like everybody's here for the production and everybody's here to get away from the bullies or their shit lives or like their misfortunes at home and that kind of stuff, and now it's like now comedy almost feels like a release again, and as soon as anybody brings in the venom or the poison everybody's quick to say hey man we don't take that no more,
Yes.
like
Yes.
keep it out, and that's why it's like I don't know, I just feel I don't know how we got here, but I feel like that's where it's like comedy's perfect again. Well, I
Yeah.
don't think everything will be perfect, but like it's sure damn close to it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because you probably know people like this too. I know people who have not come back,
Hmm. And
who've
both
not
people
come
are
back.
happy for it.
Yeah, exactly. And like you were saying, that was like the grand reset. Even though we
Yeah.
didn't know it at the time, we were just like, what the hell's happening? It was a period of time where it was like, do I continue? Do I
Hmm.
take a break or do I leave?
Yeah, and
You
you
know?
even see that too, where it's like I think that bled into like all aspects of life, whether it was
Yes.
people like their regular jobs or their relationships or like their households. You know, it's a shame that a household would fall apart, but sometimes it's better for everybody that's in it,
Yeah.
right? So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it
Because
was.
that too, I know a whole lot of people whose relationships that didn't withstand it. It was like
Mhm.
that was it shone like a spotlight or something, like highlighted like whatever issues were there, and they're made the decision to end things, sort of thing.
Oh
Which
yeah.
yeah, it's the grand reset, really.
Yeah, like my buddy's parents together for like 53 years, pandemic, and then they divorced.
Wow.
But they're
Wow.
both happy. Like one, his mom's traveling around, you know, seeing all the sights and stuff because her husband was more so a stay-at-home work on the company, kind of like go to the
Hmm.
cottage kind of guy. And then the husband's happy because now he's just living at the cottage.
Yeah, you can do. Yeah, that's the thing. Like yeah, it was. I remember being in it and just being like really anxious and like afraid because yeah, you couldn't ask anyone what's going to happen because everyone was like, "Fuck if I know." We have
Yeah.
murder hornets on the way. All
Yeah,
kinds of,
yeah,
because
yeah.
there
And
was
then
a
they add
period of there
everything.
was a period of time like that summer of 2020 where it was like murder hornets, and then something like there was always something on deck, like aliens or
Yeah, yeah.
something. And we're
Yeah,
like,
and then you got people, it's the times of the biblical times. Like
exactly,
you said,
locusts
murder
and stuff.
hornets as the locusts.
Yes, exactly. Where it was like, what next? Like, what else is
Yeah.
coming? And it was just like a level, like a period of just really high anxiety because it's like we
Mm,
don't know what's going on, and just trying to make the best of like a scary, the scary unknown. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Yeah. But
Yeah.
I found that there was like a real um line with those who pivoted and tried online. Those who tried it and were like, it's not for me, I'm going to wait. sort of thing, and those that were like, I no, I'm gonna do something else till it comes back. I'm gonna do
Yeah.
things like in the background, like not on Zoom, work on my stuff, and do other things and come back.
Yeah.
And you know, I yeah, I just it was strange. It was a strange period of time, but I like the fact that, well, I don't like the fact that we were locked up for so long, but
No.
I could appreciate the fact that it gave everyone, like you said, a chance to reevaluate what was
Yeah.
important to them. Like not even like just in life,
Yeah.
like what was important to them, and what had to change or what needed to change and things like that.
Yeah. It's like, and it's cool too because it's like you see it where it's unfortunate for some others, but it's also like it's like if people have seen that there's been no progress or there's been no kind of betterment or there's been no some kind of like enlightenment, then it's like I feel like as a collective, everybody's just like, okay, like if you didn't take anything from that to get better or polished in, I don't know, not necessarily materialized when you say polished, but like just overall better as a human being, then it's like I don't know. I feel like now that we've had all this, where it's just like when people see wasted potential, it's just an automatic like turn off, kind of where you're
Yeah.
like, okay, man, like
Yeah.
you, I don't know, you can't like roll. Like that's how I almost feel like, where it's just like some things where it's like, man, like you haven't evolved in this part. I'm sorry. Like
Mm-hmm.
when
Because
will
I
you
think people,
evolve?
yeah, exactly. And I think, I know for myself, um, I don't think the pandemic, or not the pandemic itself, but lockdown, that isolation and everything did wonders for my comedy. I don't think I'd be where I am now if not for the pandemic, because it forced me
Oh,
to, like when things start to open up, I like hit the ground running,
yeah,
and I don't think I would have the stuff I wouldn't have learned a lot of the lessons and things that I can do now. I wouldn't have learned them. I don't think I would
yeah,
have learned them otherwise, or it would have taken longer,
yeah.
you
I
know.
agree with that
Yeah, yeah,
100%.
like it did. Whereas like where like people like lost weight or went back to school and did other enriching things for their life. For me, it was my life fell apart.
Yeah.
Like anxiety and everything. I stress eat and everything, but like
Oh,
my hair and
100%.
my comedy thrived
Yeah, 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 yeah. But
during the
sometimes in
pandemic.
life, that's all that
Yeah.
matters. You know what I mean? A good sense of humor and a nice little bit of hair goes a long way, long way.
Exactly. Oh yeah, because I remember like on Facebook and stuff, like people saying like, if you don't use this time, if you come out of this and you haven't improved in some way, like you've wasted all this time. And at some level, I was like, I remember thinking in terms of like mental health and stuff, saying like, this is really difficult for a lot of people, and they may not be able to do all these things that they want to do. But I think at some level, everyone does, because like I thought of myself like, oh no, like I could have been exercising 4 hours a day and you know come out of it like all buff and whatever, but I didn't. I came out the other side, but I did work on
That's
other
okay though. But
things.
even if it's like whatever, you like you said, you progress, you advanced in other ways. Where it's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if you were putting your time in for that, then you wouldn't have been putting your time in for the other stuff. So it's like
Exactly. Yeah. And so
everything happens the way it will.
exactly. And the thing is, we've all evolved somehow. We've all had to adapt, and that in itself, just being able, just coming out the other side of it.
Hmm.
Whether you have a new skill or you've improved a skill or you've met new people or something, like that's all good, and that's all progress.
Hmm. Hmm. It's
So
just the people that you know stayed
mhm.
inside, chain smoke cigarettes, drink beer, smoke dope, and then just came out like, yeah, I wanted the world to
Came
burn.
out worse. Like
Yeah, yeah, you're like,
this.
get back in that hole
Yeah,
you
go
were in
back.
there for 2 years. Yeah.
This.
You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
here, you come with me. We're gonna push this rock. It's gonna be like the reverse Christ too.
Push you back in the
Yeah,
cave
push
and
it back.
put the
Yeah,
rock over.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. You stay in there, buddy.
You
Stay in
stay in
there.
there and think about what you haven't done.
Yeah, what you haven't done. Here's a light too. Although you might try and drink this kerosene, but I would say use it for warmth and
And
illumination.
illumination. Exactly. But yeah, so I think yeah, I'd say the lockdown was like the great reset of everything, and I think I think it was a good thing. I think it was a good thing. It was jarring and shocking because
Hmm.
unprecedented, but I think it was a good thing. And so we kind of touched like this question that I have, like we sort of touched on it in the last couple of minutes that we were talking, like what do you think live stand-up comedy would look like post COVID? And we've seen it, we've been experiencing it.
Yeah, I
And
kind of knew I knew it was gonna be better. I knew like it was gonna be just from like going through it and seeing the interest on people wanting to do Zooms and knowing that it was there, and then like seeing those live shows come back, even if they were legal or not, especially first like having those like well, technically speakeasy go-aways, right? Where it was like
yeah,
we did have to, oh, we're leaving the cohort. Oh, are you sure you're gonna bring COVID back? You're like, oh, who gives a shit, like kind of that aspect where you're like,
or behind plexiglass and all sorts of
yeah,
stuff.
like
Yeah,
all this kind of stuff. I knew like, oh, okay, people want it, and plus when I started seeing other comics come out and then like I always say there's two shows in comedy. There's the show that's on the stage, and then there's the show that's in the wings, and like, and seeing how the energy was of everybody coming back together and not seeing each other, like, and like you're like, oh shit, and like I
yeah,
felt the muse and I felt the power that was growing, and then I was like always interested, and then like you'd see the guys that like you haven't seen still hit, or you'd hit, and like you get it, and you'd be like, oh shit, it doesn't go away,
yeah.
but then it
Oh
came
yeah,
with that new sense of energy, of urgency, and like like yeah, love for yourself and love for
yeah.
the craft that was pouring out, and it was like
Oh
I
yeah,
knew once we got back and seeing all the people, and like as much as people say like the Ben Bankus shows were problematic during like that Toronto time, just to see the kind of people that came out
yeah.
being like, you know what, fuck it, you guys got a 3 grand ticket, hey, guess what, we crowdfunded it that night, here's your
I
3 grand, man, we'll
remember
see you
that.
guys next week,
Yeah,
right, where it was
I
just
remember. I
like,
thought that was amazing. I thought that
yeah,
was
where it was
awesome.
like the people, it was the power of the people, and and then it was like the power of the comics being like, you know what, no, like we got to go back out there, let's go out, and like this is for us, this is
Yeah,
like, and then it became to that point where it was like it just felt old school in a matter of where it was like we were jesters, or we were the voice of the people making fun of the king again, and like
yeah,
making and pointing fun at the system and being like none of this shit makes sense, but also you know finding
mhm,
that line of like where is like satire, but where is like speech that is dubbed ill mannered, and like kind
yeah.
of like finding the point and like pointing it got us comics back to pointing the finger at the system, and
Yes,
as well as
yes,
being like, hey
yes.
man, like this, and having the people through our words and through everything, where it was just
Yeah,
like, oh shit, it was no longer like going to Estevan and tell dick jokes to figure it out. It was like, hey, this is my opinions and this is what
yeah,
my thoughts are.
yeah,
And now it's like, so you had like all that kind of shit, but then you also had the flair for the old bits, because you're
yeah.
like, oh, does this work? But there was also a point where it was like I even felt dirty doing pre-pandemic bits, like at that time, where it's
Yeah.
like people are like, what do you mean, man, you were in their house for a year and a half and you're coming back telling the same closer, like what? Like you didn't even at least move that closer to your opener and write a new bit, like So then it was like, and you'd see it too, and then that was when that was like almost the first layer of the people coming
Yes.
back, where they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna do stand up," and then all the other comics were like, "Yo, bro, do you not know like what we all just went through here? Like, where's the topical humor?"
Yeah.
And then it was like, "Oh, I actually don't like comedy. I just, oh, okay, yeah, no, you guys do it. I'm gonna stay in. I'm gonna stay in and protect my cohort."
Right.
You know,
Yeah, and then there
so
was like a wave of like when things started opening up, like everybody had at least a bit or two about quarantine or what they
yeah,
learned and stuff like that. And then
yeah,
I remember then there was like a shift away from it where
yeah,
nobody talked about life like during 2020 or during lockdown. And then
yeah.
now it's sort of coming back, which
Yeah,
is
because it's
bits and
always like,
pieces. Yeah.
yeah, like the flare ups where it was like, because it was like cool not to tell old bits, and it was like hot not to tell old bits, and then you tell your COVID bits, but then COVID bits became hack.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then, like, so then you would go back to like non COVID bits, but then the government would be like, hey, COVID's back. And you're like, oh shit, yo, I could bring out that type five again. You know? So
Exactly.
you're like, the joke became topical again. But
Right.
now
And
it's
then
like finding the mix between, yeah, okay, we have to acknowledge in the new hour what we
exactly.
went through, but we don't have to make that hour about COVID.
Right,
So it was
right.
like
And I think
it
that
has the
we've
peppers
well,
and the
exactly. I
elements
think
to
we
it.
found like the mix or the balance because yeah, like
Yeah,
you were saying at first it was like, well, you have to acknowledge it. So people were going up in their entire sets or most of their sets were
yeah,
COVID related, and then yeah, it was hacked, so nobody did it, and then you'd pepper in a couple of things like if something in the news or the government said something.
yeah,
And now I find that there's a nice mix. Like some people address it, some people don't, but it's enough that the audience isn't like, oh god, just more COVID jokes, or why
yeah.
isn't anybody talking about COVID? Like there's none of that.
Yeah,
Like
but
there's
then
enough
even like,
mix.
because you found it where it was like there was like the waves of people too, where it was like there was the first wave of people that would come out say who gives a shit, and then the second one like, and then but then there'd be people that had babies or like children or something during COVID, and then it's like, yeah, this is whatever your 800th time out performing and all this, but like there's some people where it's like, yo man, like this is my first week of going out and like
Yes,
seeing shows and
yes,
shit. And you're like, yo,
yes.
it's year two. And you're like, yeah, I know, but like I had a baby and
Yeah.
like
Or they
times are
had a sick, I
crazy.
know people who had like sick parents or grandparents
Yeah.
that they not that they didn't want to go out, but their concern for their family was more important. But
Yeah.
they're like,
So
I
it's
can't risk it. Yeah.
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 And then now there's like also like a new wave of like COVID jokes and shit, I find where it's now we're almost like before it was like now like when you see it's like that cliche thing. It's like when you see someone wearing a mask now, you're like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like there's like that opposite swing that's coming back. So it's like it's almost like the anti-COVID jokes or whatever, where it's like there's a new that's it's like the gift
Yes.
that keeps on giving, baby. Where it's like
Exactly. Yeah,
there's like
because
new
it
layers
went
to
from
it and
like
shit.
jokes of, oh, it's great to be out, it's great to be here, to we don't have to wear masks anymore. And then like, oh, okay, some of us are wearing masks. That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
because
why are
you're
you
like
wearing
yeah, because it was just so it got so polarized where it's just like anything you said, you go, "Are you a trucker? You believe in that shit?" And you're like, "Yo, no, I just think like masks kind of fucked at like year three." And it's like, "Oh, you
exactly.
want to lay on your horn, huh? Where's your fuck Trudeau sticker?" And you're like, "Yo." Like, so there was like that fine line where it's
Oh
like
yeah.
because I find and there was that time, man, where it was like it was almost like the Protestant and Catholic. It's like, oh, what are you? It's like, well, I don't know. Like, what are you like? Do you wear what's your guidelines? Well, that's my guidelines, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Where it's like you couldn't say anything that was maybe a different opinion to a person because it became because at that time a difference in
It's so
opinion.
volatile. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it was a life or death situation for some where it's like if your opinion's different from mine, well, you're not wanting to wear a mask going out is just gonna kill my granny and
Yeah, you
like
killed my
a couple of my
grandmother's
kids. Yeah, so
birthday.
it's like fuck you, right? So there was
Exactly.
that you had, and that was the comic's choice,
Mhm.
where it was like find the line. Oh, did I say something that offended the king? Well, off with my head, like.
Yeah.
But that's my job, and that's my uh I don't know the word I'm trying to find, but predisposition of my profession. Would that
Yeah.
sound an educated saying? Where it was like
Well,
that
it
comes with
reminds
the
me of
job.
like Joe List's latest special that he early on in the set he says, if he's with people who wear masks, it's like, oh yeah, the masks, those anti-maskers are crazy. And then if he's with people who don't wear masks, oh yeah, those maskers, those sheep, and all kinds of things that he
Yeah,
was like vacillating between the
yeah.
two groups.
That's
It's
what
so
that,
funny.
yeah,
So
that's what I
funny.
felt like
Yeah.
we all kind of were almost. But then
Exactly.
but then like, and then like I don't know, I just find that's what I find comedy is so wicked, and like drama class too is just because it's like you have all the walks of life where you have the super cautious, wear the
Yeah.
like 6,000 masks, and they're coming out like this, and like they're your buddy, but you're
Yeah.
also like, yo, dude, like, what are you doing? And then, but then you'd
Yeah,
have
the
like
other side, people licking doorknobs and stuff
yeah,
like that.
exactly. And
The
like
other
you're
extreme.
you're in the middle being pulled by like both sides, being like, they're all my friends, but like, but then you'd have to like kind of pick it where you're like, oh, I'm gonna go hang out with these guys because if I bring this guy, he's gonna show up wearing like a hazmat suit, and everyone's gonna be like, what the hell?
Oh my God. Well, I remember at the begin, like early on, like maybe May or April, it was before like masks were mandatory, before they said like you got to wear masks wherever you go. I went to Costco and I was waiting in line at Costco, and I
Which in
probably had a
itself
mask,
was
and I remember I had gloves holding the cart, waiting outside to go in. And this guy walked by with a gas mask on.
and it was like wicked too because it was like all the people that were like, it's happening, like they would go out and do their stuff. Like I got a bunch of military gear and shit too, where I was just like, all right. As soon as I saw like everything is like everybody went nuts on toilet paper and beans, I was like, well, I'll save on the beans, but nah, I'll spend on bullets, like like that, where I'm like, shit, all right, I guess,
Oh my
gas just
God.
went to 43 cents a
Yeah,
liter,
exactly.
like, why
Exactly.
not? Yeah.
Oh my God. But I don't remember who said this. But it's a quote from somebody. I don't remember who, but it went something along the lines of uh remember when you were locked up, like when there was nothing for you to do and you couldn't go out, that you turned to the arts,
Oh, for
sort of
sure.
thing. Yeah, and that's something um that like really resonated with me. And I think like the like the renaissance of comedy right now, with among comics as well as audience members, is we kind of took it for granted. We just always thought like, yeah, we'll always be able to perform, like
Mhm.
we'll always be able to perform in front of people. Like they can't, like you can we can do stand up anywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll be able to perform in a park. We could perform here, a coffee house, a club, a theater. And then it was like, no, you can't.
No, it's illegal. You're
It's
deemed
illegal. Even
non-essential.
see like with like Ben in Toronto, outside, illegal, getting nailed with fines all the time. And
Mhm.
yeah, and I think all of that made everyone, like from a comics perspective of, yeah, like we love to do this. And you know we, we did it in like whatever way worked best for us, whether it was, you're behind the scenes just working on your material or trying stuff on camera and stuff like that. But I think it was a real like punch in the face when it was literally taken away.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because
That's
I
where it
don't
was
think
like,
anybody ever saw that happening,
oh yeah. And
you
it was
know?
like, it was tough, because it was like, oh, especially like you find your calling or your life purpose, and then it's gone, and then you're
Yeah.
kind of like, oh shit, and you're left with this void, and you're like, well, now I'm just a regular civilian,
Yeah.
and you're like, and I didn't even choose my retirement, or I didn't choose to stop playing
Right.
or doing
Right.
whatever, where it was like, now I'm just a normal person, and you had
Hmm.
these I guess voices, but like they wouldn't be like voices in like a schizophrenic matter, but like the muse talking to you, or like everything that was coming, where you're like, oh, there's the arts, there's the funny, like the humor, or the what, like the cock your head kind of thoughts and all this stuff, and then you have no outlet.
Yes.
But then
Yes.
they just encourage you to, I don't know, maybe turn to substance, and be docile, or do these things. So now it's like you have, like, I can only imagine, right, the select few of comedians that I know, but then add that to like a worldwide scale, where it's like you have these billions of these people that, whether it's not even
Hmm.
comedy or arts or whatever, it's like their purpose was taken away, and now it's
Yeah.
like you have just a huge population of people with what they would use as their outlet, maybe
Yeah. No
taken away
outlet.
from them. So now it's like you have this poison rising inside you, or not poison, but necessarily at a certain point it becomes venomous to you, right? Where it's
Right.
like, now what am I going to do? And then that's when you just fall into a self-destructive behavior, where like, I can speak
Hmm.
firsthand for that, for me, where it was like, I just, okay, cool, I got nothing to do. Well, fuck it, let's just numb these feelings with booze. And then when life kind of comes back, now it's like, well, now I'm doubling down on it and going all this crazy stuff, right? So it's like
Yeah.
you just see
Yeah.
it where, I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah. Because I know I got into alcohol pretty heavy
Oh yeah, for
at the
sure.
start. Yeah. I was drinking like a lot.
Well, and it's
Um.
like, what, the only stores that are open are grocery stores or liquor
Yeah.
stores.
Exactly.
So it's like,
Exactly.
okay, well,
Hmm.
how much can I have fun eating Brussels sprouts and
Yeah.
broccoli?
Exactly.
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 You're like,
Exactly.
yeah,
Brussels sprouts don't make me forget. Like
yeah.
that.
Forget the samosas. I'm making mimosas. Like at least I'm getting
Exactly.
vitamin C and getting shit faced at the same time, right? So, but
Exactly.
then it was like, oh, okay. But then it became so easily accessible, because it was like, well, one, I don't got to work. What else do I got to do? I just got to
Yeah.
play video games with my friends at 3 p.m.
Hmm.
So,
Exactly.
I was
Yeah.
living a life where it was like, I could be drunk, or I could be inebriated, because I didn't need to do anything besides
Hmm.
fucking sneak out in an illegal manner and drink with my friends in a park. Like, so it's like, so the
Yeah.
world kind of revolved almost around that point, where it was like, okay, well, what can we do to, you had those party time apps, or a house party came out, you had all this, and then
Yeah.
that's when it was like, I had the
Yeah.
appreciation too, because we were saying about like tend to the arts, where it was like, I'm having concert parties in my own house, where you have like famous musicians, or DJs around the world performing to nobody, but virtually to everybody,
Yeah.
and like you're partying in your living room
You're
and
like,
doing all this, yeah,
"Ns."
weird shit. But it was like,
Yes.
but yeah, there was a time for, it was like 8 months. I'm pretty sure I was drunk every day.
Because
Yeah.
like I have a day job, but I was like, okay, 4 o'clock when I'm
Oh
off the
yeah.
clock for the day job, because I
Yeah.
wasn't driving anywhere. I was just in the apartment all
Yeah.
the
Three
time.
thirty rolls around. You're
Yeah,
feeling a little
yeah.
tired.
It's
Yeah,
like
I'll have a coffee. Throw a little bit of
exactly.
Bailey's in
Yeah.
there. All that kind of stuff.
Just like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it was just that was the routine. That was the routine.
Yeah.
Like come 3:30, 4 o'clock, and yeah, so and then yeah, so that was like in the beginning. Then there's like the adjustment stage and all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a strange time. And I'm glad like we're moving out of it, and that there's this there's a renewal,
Oh, for
like with
sure.
everyone, like a renewal and
Yeah.
stuff
And it's
like
just
that.
like, it's positive too, where it's like, and especially where, I guess, I don't know. I'm not, yeah, I would say I'm a Toronto comic now, where it's like being here in the scene 7 years and watching, like seeing it, or how long, yeah. I don't know how long it's since 2015, but seeing it where it's like seeing the people from where it was to like where it is now and like all this stuff, you just see a huge, like massive change
Mm-hmm.
in just like attitude more so than
Yeah.
anything. That was the biggest
Yes.
change where it's like all
Yeah.
this. And then of course, you have these comics that we lost too during that time where you're just like, holy shit. And then it was kind of like a double hit where it goes, hey guys, not only is our art not for certain, life isn't for certain too. So it's like,
Yes.
now it's like whatever differences you may have had, whether they were like petty or small or some shit, like you've made amends for them. But then it's like an also kind of thing where it's like, oh, if you did have enemies or whatever, you're kind of like, hey man, like, no matter what, it's like I still wish you a prosperous life even if I hate you, right? Where there was
Yeah.
almost a sense of like it gave everybody an opportunity to forgive people for maybe their transgressions too, like
Yeah.
personally for themselves and for others, where it was like, holy shit, man, like there was a portion where like 4 or 5 of us just dropped within a matter of months apart. So you
Mm-hmm.
were like, oh man, like
Yeah.
like what are we here for if not
Yeah.
for love and fun? So it's like
Exactly.
kind of it was like a nice kind of like I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, as much as it took for us, it gave a lot to us in an aspect where it's like you have to love the faith that is given to you, whether it's bad or good. Because at the end of
Yes.
the day, it's like at
That's all you
least
have.
you're still here, right? So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. I know. I know. Um, so like I went to, because you say you moved to Toronto about 17, not 17, that's wrong.
2015, yeah,
2015. Okay, so 7 years. Like I lived in Toronto for 17 years, but I wasn't doing, I only started comedy when I moved to Ottawa in
yeah.
2019. And I was in Toronto for a week. It was my first time back for like a period of time since I moved. So and I went specifically for comedy. I did a whole week of stuff and I was like overstimulated almost.
Yeah.
Like it was so much fun. Like I like it was one of the best weeks of my life. I had so much fun and I was just amazed at how many shows you could do in a week,
Oh yeah, for sure.
you
That's where
know?
it's like
Yeah, it
that's why
was
I'm like I think about moving like I think about moving, but I'm also like, okay, if I move from here, I have to move up almost
yeah.
where it's like because even when I go to other scenes where I'm like staying there for a week, whether I go back home or I go to Vancouver or I go to like other places, I'm like it's always underwhelming because you're like, well, shit, like, can we still grind right now? Or like, at
Yeah.
least let's go for like some food. And they're like, dude, no, like
Everything's
everything's
closed.
closed. You're like, what do you mean, man? It's like 11:30. They're like, yeah, you're not getting food. And you're like, what? Or
I
you're like
know.
to the city. But I hated this city. I hated it with every molecule in my body for the first 4 years. And then when I found like a nice like kind of I know my nature spots. I know certain my favorite parts of the city, my boroughs. I have my crew. I have my show runs. I got like a steady income coming in where it was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, because it was like this city kicks the shit out of you,
Oh yeah.
especially when you come here too, where it's like, and that's where it's like the people that stay. It's like they have almost a sense of like resiliency to them or like an adaptability and stuff because it's like I've had friends that have moved here and then they're like, yo man, like I don't know how you do this. And you're like, yeah, well, you just eat ramen for X amount of years until you can afford chicken. And you have to be okay with that.
Oh yeah,
And
like
if you're
I hated
yeah,
it the first year. Like I wasn't there for comedy or anything. Like I moved there
yeah,
for work, and I remember the first year and a half to 2 years, hated it, hated it. If I had the
yeah,
opportunity to go back to Montreal, I would have gone. But then, like
yeah,
you said, once you find like your groove and you make friends and you learn your surroundings and you get your
yeah.
bearings about you. It's like I love it. So like I miss it. I
Yeah, and
miss it
there's
so
like
much.
there's
Yeah.
a sense of like like the pace of the place is kind of like a little fast, but then there's also a sense of like, and I understand where people are like, oh, everyone's kind of an asshole in Toronto, but it's also like it has that tempo where it's like, oh, well, I got so much shit I'm doing. What's up,
Yeah,
man? Like,
yeah.
because like the time that you take to like chill is almost time for yourself because you're
Hmm.
so
Yeah,
like everything's going. So it's
exactly.
like,
And like even just traveling like across the city and stuff like that takes
yeah.
time. And yeah,
Yeah,
so
and so like that's when I noticed first when I came in, I'm like, man, these guys are dicks, like all this, because I'm coming from like Edmonton, where someone will just be like, hey man, how are you? And then you're in like a 20-minute conversation, like so I'm like kind of trying to stir up those kind of same things, but then I'm like, oh shit, no, okay, oh
this
okay,
is different.
there's different style of operator here, and like so it was on the fourth year, I think I was fully like okay with how short and rude people would be, but they're not. They're just being
Yeah,
like,
they're
like
just
what's up?
living. Yeah, they're just living their
Yeah,
life. Because what like
yeah,
this I couldn't help but laugh. So the week that I was there at the end of May, and I did a whole bunch of shows. And just the fact that there were so many shows, like I would go just to see, and they'd be like, "Oh, like you're from Ottawa. Do you want to do like 5 minutes?" Sure, sort of thing. So it was like that everywhere I went. And so a show that I was actually scheduled on that week, there were two shows. So there was an earlier show and a later show. And so at the end of the later show, remember the comics were milling about, and I was like, okay, I'll just be right back. And I went to the washroom and I came back and everyone was gone. Just poof, because they had other things to do. They had other
yeah,
places to
yeah.
be. But
Oh
I'm so
yeah,
used to like the scene here where it's like I could go outside for 20 minutes and come back and there's still going to be people around. And I was gone maybe 5 minutes.
yeah,
Everyone was
yeah. Well, that was like it's funny because yeah, you just got to go in and you dip and you don't know. Like that's why it's like when you see people leaving, you just go, hey man, you gotta you gotta stop your conversation around. Yo, you leaving? Okay, sick. Hey bro, it was nice seeing you. See you later. All this stuff and like it's so
I know
funny
that
because
now. I
yeah,
know it because I thought, "Oh, I'm
yeah,
just gonna like I had all my stuff and I was just like, "Oh, I'm just gonna, run to the bathroom before I leave and I'll say bye."
yeah.
No, in that time, poof, everybody was gone.
Yeah, because it's like, and it's funny too, where it's like that was the thing where I'm like, there's almost this state of like activeness now, where it's like anything like like I was like, where was I? I was out in LA, and we stopped over when we were coming back from Melbourne, and then like these guys were like, they were so stoked. They're like, "Oh man, it was crazy. We did like 4 shows this week. It's like a high number." And then me and Atish were like, "Oh, what?" Like, well, we did 4 on a Monday,
Yeah,
kind of stuff like that, where it's like
exactly.
thing where like the level of entry that we would be at, these guys are saying they're doing that, and we're like, oh no, we're not coming back to LA until they want us back, like so it was just funny where you're like,
Oh
yeah, like,
yeah.
and that's why I like Edmonton's pretty good because you can at least hit like 2 mics a night, kind of stuff like that. But it's like if I'm in a place where it's like this is the mic
And
and
there's
it's the
nothing else.
one, you're like, no, I can't, I can't, you
I get
know?
such like a rush when I'm able to do when there's like when I can do
Yeah,
more than one show in one night. It's I get such a rush from it. I
yeah,
love it.
but it's like also kind of stressful too, where you're like
Yeah, yeah.
lined up. Where I remember I did like I was trying to do 6 in one night, and then but like,
Six.
yeah, but I was like I felt kind of bad because it was literally I'd show up, hey man, I need to go up right now, and then they'd be like, what, okay, and then like, but it was, and I felt bad because it was like during that week I was doing like an insane amount of shows where I was like, I don't think I did anything less than 3. I was averaging probably like 4 to 5 shows in a night. And
Wow.
then, but Sandra was on like a lot of the shows, and I'd always be bumping Sandra like like I bumped her like 3 times that week,
Oh
and it
no.
was just funny. Where I'm like, I'm sorry, like that's what happens, right? But it is like a rush where you're like driving, and then you're like coming in, and like if one like, show goes off time,
Oh yeah. Oh
then
yeah.
you're like, so you like the whole time you're just like, and like so stressed out,
It's true.
like you're sports betting, you're just like, oh come on, get it, come on, like. looking at the time, you're like getting angry at people going over when like of course you always go over and like so but even yesterday too, I got to do I like when you can do a lot of sets at comedy bars so you don't have to like go anywhere. So I played the cab and then I played the main and then back to the cab, but it was also like it's weird when you because you're used to accustomed going to a show and like feeling the energy of the show and like being there
Yeah.
and assessing it, but when you like just got to go up, it's like
Yeah, yeah,
because you
yeah.
just
Because
come
I've
from
had to
one.
do that a couple of times, and that's jarring because you're going in cold because you don't know what the
Yeah,
crowd is like. You don't know what they've been laughing at. You don't know anything,
yeah,
and
and
it's
you're,
just
and you're coming in from your gear of your last show. So if the last
yes,
show was like
yes.
easy hot and like firing from the hip kind of stuff, and then you come in with that energy and you go, "Oh, hey, no, okay, guns on the table. All right, here you guys go. What's going on? How are you? You gotta like,
Or the crowd's like
yeah, yeah. Because that's what happened. Like the first show was wicked, and then I go to do the second one, and it felt like I was like I kicked open the door, ready for action, and then it was just two people playing cards at the table, being like, hey, what's up?" And you're like, "Oh shit, how you guys doing? I heard that there's a house call." You know, like,
exactly. Oh my God, it's so much
yeah.
fun.
So
But
it's like
it's,
I don't know, it's fun. I thoroughly enjoy Toronto. I'm
yeah, I
thinking in my
enjoyed it
life
when
of
I
like
was
what
there.
I don't
Yeah.
know if anywhere else in Canada besides living back home in Edmonton, like I'd want to be.
Yeah. I wanna, I don't know. I'm booked to go back for a weekend, but that's with the club, so I wouldn't be able to, I won't be anywhere else, but I want to come, I want to do another week like I did in May. So I,
Oh yeah,
because
how
I had so much
long?
fun. I had so
Yeah,
much fun. That was so much fun. So we're gonna wrap things up. So a couple of other questions that I like, interview questions that I had for
yeah,
you
no stress.
were, um, what, like, as a seasoned comic, you've been a comic for what, 12, 13 years,
14 come
for
Feb.
14 years. Like, what are some of the biggest mistakes in your opinion that you see new comedians making?
Um, Turning on the audience quick, and I find I'm like that too, where like they almost get defensive on their jokes, where
Mm,
like if it doesn't hit, then they kind of like address it, where it's like they get almost angry.
okay.
I'd say probably getting too drunk on stage. That's
Mm,
one of it. That's what I see a lot these
I've
days
seen
too.
that
Now
too.
it's people thinking that they need to have a drink to get loose, but then they go past their limit and now they're too loose. That's what I
Mm,
would say that. And then the I'll say what everybody has always told me. It's like if you unless you have a show to go to or you have another like engagement that you need to attend, then not staying at the show and like watching the other comics or hanging out or find or trying to find the like coming in, yeah, that, or like not hanging out and watching other pros or watching people like that or like asking the questions that like, hey man, like where are you gonna be next, or like finding like the guys doing your research and shit and like going and staying shows or going to the clubs. That's why it's like or spending too much time at a shitty open mic where it's like you can get more out of it by not performing at an open mic to just comics instead of hanging out at another club and then learning from better comics and now it's like, oh, you're that guy that's always hanging out. Well, hey man, you want to do comedy? It's like, well, here's these mics because they give you maybe a level of better mics than your entry levels that you'd come into.
yeah.
I'd say those guys not doing that, and then being too friendly and being too like informal with other comics. That's what I'd
Mm,
say. Like these new guys where it's like just because you're a comedian doesn't mean you're a companion, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Where it's like you're too friendly and buddy buddy with me, and it's like, what are you doing, man? Like
Mm,
you've done comedy 3 times.
Yeah,
Like,
we don't know each other. Yeah.
yeah, we don't
Yeah.
know you like that level kind of stuff. But then also, like, I don't know, I can see it being like intimidating for younger comics coming in and stuff, where it's like they have social anxiety and stuff like that. But I would say, like, yeah, not watching the pros, getting too drunk on stage, and then just being like loose. Like, that's one thing that I kind of wish I understood earlier in my career was just being loose with my words, and even loose with my comments on like social media or like things like that, where it's just like everybody kind of like sees and hears, right? So it's like the
Yeah.
more tighter you are off stage, the more you're able to get loose on stage, if
That's
that
good
kind of
advice.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So would those things be some of the things that your younger self, your younger, when I say younger, not necessarily age-wise, but your younger comic self, wish you had somebody had told you or that you had learned?
No, like a lot of the stuff too is oh, and like, yeah, I don't know, like the things that I learned, like that I still to this day kind of like keep in mind, where it was like yeah, like stay and watch the pros and stuff, unless you had things like, because like that's where I was fortunate enough to grow up and start the way I did, was in Edmonton, where it was like we had the comic strip, or we had the clubs, right, where it's like if you weren't playing the theaters, or if you weren't playing like independent large venues or the arenas, you'd come and play the strip, right? So it was like our thing was do the open mics Monday to Thursday, and then the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and even the Sundays, we'd be hanging out at the clubs, watching, hanging out,
Yeah.
like chilling and stuff like that, watching those guys. So I always did that. But I'd probably say like I probably could have like drank less, 100%,
Mhm.
like when I was first starting out. And then the one comics always told us never hook up with waitresses and never hook up with other comics. And like that was one thing I did. And then you don't understand, right? But then it's also like as you're going on, you're like, okay, cool, I learned it too, because like it's professional. But then like comedy, I find, is a sacred space, you know what I mean, where it's like, and it's hard too, because it's like work in this aspect where it's like you're always around those people every
Yeah.
day and stuff. So it's like I understand that it's hard, but it's also what's harder, not hooking up with the person and making the mistake, because later on now your whole scene's blown up, and then you got to see this person every day, and now
Yeah.
comedy isn't become a sacred space. It's a place of like, shit, now I got to see this
Yeah.
person, right? And your laundry
Right.
gets aired out and all that. But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know, I was just very fortunate to have like these kind of mentors, but also they were almost an aspect of father figures, because they're like 40 something doing comedy 20 years,
Right.
and then they're like, hey man, come under my wing, you're the young 18-year-old. And so they like kind of teach you that stuff, and like getting the mic out clean, and just like small offstage professionalisms that were
Right.
like, but it was also, you're
Invaluable.
coming from like Alberta, where it's like the bars are your like training ground, but you're also setting up for corporates and
Right.
road work and all
Right.
this stuff,
Right.
right, where like you got to go in, make sure the show gets booked for the next guy. So it was like always kind of those things, being nice, tipping the wait staff whenever you're doing that, and just making it so they want to have comedy again.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
like, as much as we are telling dick jokes and running around the country doing whatever we're doing, we also have to be professional and
Yes.
courteous people for the next, right?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Because I know for myself, like, um, I think a lot of that stuff is also like youth, being young, and you're finding yourself and learning these
oh
things.
yeah,
Like I started, I'm old as dirt. I started old, so some of those things I already knew, I guess.
yeah,
Some like this, like the social stuff and things like that. Because say like comics my age have been doing it for 20 plus
yeah,
years, and I've only been doing it for 3, so there's that. I can't think of the word, but like on one hand it's like, yeah, just because I've been in like a professional world and stuff like that, I know how to handle myself. But like
hmm,
like comedy wise, performance wise, like in the comedy sphere, I'm still new,
yeah. But then
still
it's
learning
like
all these things.
it shows like like that's what I think it too. Like when I was young, and a lot of people like that were older were like, "Oh, okay, this kid could come kick it," was because I also was like a student to the game, where I was like I had a general interest of like
Yes.
it wasn't just let's go around and get chicken wings and beers and be the ass clown. It was also like, okay, well, how do I do this, and how do I do
Yes.
it like you, and once I do it like you, how do I do it better than you? So
Hmm.
it was like people were like, "Oh, okay. Oh, you actually care." And then I'm also showing up every time at the club just
Yeah,
to hang out and stuff. So then now
exactly.
Bart, like the bookers and the professional people that aren't the comedians are
Hmm.
seeing that, "Oh, hey, this kid wants something. Okay, well,
Yeah,
why don't we give him
that
five
you're working
minutes?
hard and
Yeah,
you're
oh,
learning
okay.
and yeah, all of that.
Yeah. He's okay. We've seen him do that 5 minutes for a week now. He's added his tags. He's built up a
Hmm.
callback. He's cut his fat. Hey man, here's another 5 minutes. So now you're eating tens and you're growing and you're growing and growing. But like, just it's
Hmm.
like it's
Yeah.
like that kid coming to the garden every day. You're gonna be like, pick up that hoe over there and let's start planting some stuff. You want to, So it's like
Yeah.
they see that you're showing a general interest into the art form, then it's just
Hmm.
human nature to be like, hey man, like you want to learn some stuff?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that has fared me well too, because that's what I did. I was like, I want to learn. I want to learn. I want to like ask questions and things like that. So yeah, I went to clubs and I asked people questions, and that's part of why I started this this podcast, because I had just started when everything shut down, and I was like, I don't want to lose this momentum, and I still want to learn, you know?
Hmm.
So it's that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was
No
such a
worries.
wonderful.
And don't forget to bomb.
Yes, yes,
That's
yes.
it.
That
Don't be
yes, that's
scared of the
necessary.
bomb.
Yeah,
Don't be
it's
scared of the
necessary.
bomb. Sit in the silence, stay in the pocket. But if you
Yeah.
feel like you can do a play action and a run out, then do it. But just have fun with it, enjoy it. Know that it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you get what you put in. So if you put in
Exactly.
positivity and you put in a drive, and then that's what I've learned in the last year, where it's like
Mhm.
if you just go in it with open hands and surrender to the process and just make sure that you're doing the necessary work off stage to get better on stage, that things will
Yes.
come to you. And
Yes.
don't be an
Yes.
asshole,
Yeah.
and don't make
Exactly.
girls feel uncomfortable, damn it. There
Yes.
you go. There you
Yes.
go. Stop
Yes.
being, if you're a dude, don't be a creep. If you're a girl, stop touching guys' asses, you know? And there you
Yeah,
go.
just like
Both sexes, leave each other alone. Just
yeah.
worry about the funny,
Stop
and
touching.
stop being sickos. And don't talk to me close to my face, Like, give me a little bit of distance. That's what I want, And if there's a show going on, shut the fuck up. Unless you
It's
guys are having a real good time, then go take it
then
outside.
take it
But
somewhere else.
yeah,
Exactly.
and keep your table talk to a minimum and your laughter to a
Kind of
maximum.
that exactly. Yes. Oh my God. But this was a wonderful discussion. I would still like to have you answer some of my
Sure.
random
Yeah,
questions. We'll
I
just
got
take a
like I could
couple of
do
minutes.
like a couple more minutes. I just got to get
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, no problem. So
Yeah.
maybe we could do two. So
Yeah,
if you could
sure.
pick a number between 1 and 250, and I'll ask you the corresponding question.
9 and 27.
9 and 27. Okay. So, question 9. If you could live anywhere in the world for a year, where would it be?
Anywhere in the world for a year,
Yeah.
and like I know the language and stuff, and like it's good, or I can just live there for a year.
Whatever parameters you want to put on it. Whether you want to learn the language while you're there, or you already know the language, or
If I could
yeah.
live anywhere in the world for a year, I'd probably either pick
I say live there for a year and be able to function, whatever
be there
that
to
looks like.
function.
Whatever that looks like.
Probably say like Cyprus or something.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a nice little Mediterranean island, and I can just chill and stuff. I don't really know the politics there, but I mean, if I'm just sitting there working from home
Sounds
and
cool.
enjoying sun and stuff, why
Yeah,
not?
why not? Exactly. Exactly. Okay,
Yeah, I'd
that's a
probably
cool
say there.
answer.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm
And
I'm
you
going
said,
like grand scale because it's like if I wanted to go to New York for a year, I could, or if I wanted to go, you know what I mean, back to
right,
Alberta or Toronto or anywhere in here, I would. But I don't know. Yeah, why not? New York or Cyprus? Let's say that.
very different.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Very different. And okay, so the other number you said was 27?
Yeah,
Okay. 27 is how many bones have you broken?
two.
Two.
Yeah, I chipped my big toe and then I shattered my thumb into 6 pieces.
Oh, geez. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
How
But
did you
after
shatter
how
your
many
toe?
bones I had to pick, huh? I got a lot of bones to pick.
Yeah, how many did I pick and how many did I break?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, Danny, thank you so much.
No
This was
worries.
an awesome conversation. Where can people find you? I'll put your socials and everything in the
My
notes.
address is no. You can find me at just Danny Martinello on Instagram, and then that's it. Really, that's it. Find
Okay.
me at Danny Martinello.
All right. I
That's
will
it.
see you in January.
What?
I will see you in January.
Yes, yes. We're in
Yes.
January. And if this is released, if you're in the area or Alberta area, I'll be in Alberta all of December.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you again. Thank you so
No
much.
worries. Thank you for having
Uh,
me. Thank you for
yeah.
reaching out. I enjoyed myself.
Oh yeah, this was fun. This was fun. So enjoy December. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, kitty cat.
Yeah, I got a kitty cat. She's
Yeah. Behind the curtain you go, kitty cat. Behind the curtain. But
Yes. Well,
thank you so much, and
yeah,
I
thank you
enjoyed
so
my time
much.
with you, and may you enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you, you too. I'll talk to you
You're all
soon.
take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.